Hello and welcome again to the live here at Autistic Radio for the second hour of day one. One of the most important parts of advocacy is getting a voice out there that is reasonable, that people can hear and relate to, that is less controversial and more looking for an accord. We had a lovely podcast with Scott Frazzard. He has platforms and he's somebody that's worth looking into. So I'm going to share Scott's podcast and listen along with it.
We speak our words, we listen.
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 Wow. Today on Autistic Radio, I am looking forward to hearing about a different kind of advocacy. I am looking forward to something about changing what we've been doing, about somebody who has had another life and came to their diagnosis late and then decided to do something. And that person is Scott. Hi, Scott. Where are you speaking from?
Hey, Jules. I am in Houston, Texas, in the United States.
Wow, that's a long way away. We've got some people in Edinburgh, we've got some people down in England, and I'm here in India at the moment. So this is the autistic world. We're everywhere.
Absolutely.
Can I start somewhere easy? How did this come about, this autism diagnosis?
So, great question. My wife and I like 6 years ago, about a year before I was formally identified, we're watching TV and we were watching this reality show called The Employables that followed neurodivergent people as they attempted to find work. And whenever they highlighted an autistic person, something about that person just resonated with me. And after we watched a couple episodes, I started wondering, am I autistic? So I started doing some reading online, did some of those online tests, which may or may not be really reliable. And I even asked, I shared that with my wife, and I asked her to take one of these tests through my lens, because she knows me oftentimes better than I know myself. And I scored really high, indicating that I could be autistic. She scored even higher. And so then the seed was planted. And at that point, I needed to know. Having grown up in the medical field, all I knew about autism was the pathologized medical model view of it. So my curiosity was really up there. I finally found somebody who specialized in evaluating adults that affirmed my suspicion that I was autistic. And it was an emotional roller coaster, but it was actually quite a positive experience.
So it's life affirming. That's cool.
Very.
I'm really glad to hear that. And, you know, it's a story we hear on Autistic Radio again and again. When people finally do get that realization, that self-diagnosis, and then possibly even a formal diagnosis afterwards, it just seems to make life work out, doesn't it?
It does. And like I tell people, learning that I'm autistic provides me with an explanation of my life experiences, and things make a lot more sense, especially the sensory issues. And having that knowledge opened up a community that I did not realize existed. And it allowed me to interact with others who are also autistic and learn from them. And that was probably the greatest part of it.
I'm already getting the impression from you, from what you're saying there, you're describing yourself as an autistic person. You're not a person with autism. You're straight into the neurodiversity paradigm.
That is absolutely correct.
What is it now in your life that's making sense for you?
Wow, that's a really good question. The things that make sense are things like, I'll start off with sensory. Whereas any other person most likely would see a tree and it's blowing in the wind, they don't even notice it. For me, when I see that, I see every single leaf moving, which is extremely distracting. So that is, knowing that, I know that when I am in a meeting or talking to somebody, I've got to close out all of the distractions. Another example, the stimming I would do. One of the things I would do when I'm nervous, for example, is I would twist my beard, and that would drive my wife crazy. And she would repetitively tell me to stop doing that. And I don't even know that I'm doing it. After I learned I'm autistic and learned about stimming, and she and I both explored that together, she realized what it was. She would deal with it differently, and she would ask me what is stressing me versus stop doing that. Same thing with going to the dentist. For many, many years, I did not go to the dentist. I hated it because of the sensory issues. And we figured out what was most troubling to me. And now when we go to the dentist, we actually put me under general sedation so that I don't have those issues.
So the knowledge of your autism is giving you simple shortcuts in your life that just makes life easier again.
Yes, having that explanation as to why those things occur absolutely gives me direction to manage those sensory issues.
Does it also mean that you're really enjoying the sensory experience, that you're embracing it and looking for ways of enjoying your enhanced sensitivity?
Absolutely. So there are definitely things that I really enjoy doing, things that I didn't know why I enjoyed. I can now seek those things out. One of my other outlets is writing, and I'm doing a lot more writing these days to put my thoughts into a more concrete format. And that allows me to go back and look at those and flesh my thoughts out a little bit more. I've really enjoyed that part of it, which has also helped my advocacy work.
Scott, does your sensory thing mean you can become more immersive now in the environment?
Ooh, I think the answer is yes. If nothing else, I'm more aware of what's going on and why I enjoy things. Like I really enjoy being out in nature. And now when I go out into nature, it's more than just being out there. It's being out there to recharge my batteries. So I think I'm more aware of those things in my environment that bring me joy without knowing why they brought me joy previously.
Yeah, I try to get that total experience in the environment, but of course I'm trying. And, nobody say it's a gift for you to have that capability, because I can understand that it might be distressing if you're getting far too much coming in at once, especially in maybe highly stressed business meetings or stuff like that.
I also think for me, anyhow, it gives me the agency to extract myself from environments that don't work for me and do things to help reduce the stimuli that causes me a lot of stress. Like we were at a restaurant just the other night. Restaurants have this tendency of doing this really loud, obnoxious birthday celebration for guests that have a birthday. And two of them happened back to back on either side of me. And both times I had to stop the conversation with my wife, close my eyes, cover my ears, and wait for it to go away. And, you know, prior to learning I'm autistic, that would have been seen as a big social faux pas, and people would be upset if I just stopped the conversation and plugged my ears. But knowing that I'm autistic and knowing what's going on allowed me to extricate myself from the environment the best I can so that I don't get too stressed out.
Yeah, without total avoidance, which is the case. The more extreme end would be to just totally avoid any social situation because you expect these things to happen, you know, which is the thing that I went through that led to me getting my diagnosis.
Absolutely. Which I guess has its pluses and minuses. There may be less things that I'm willing to go do, whereas maybe before I'm maybe more willing to go try, but it definitely gives me the forethought of looking at where I am at the moment and do I have the spoons, as they say, to go endure this additional stress. I'm able to readjust, but also evaluate. Some days I do want external interaction. Other days I don't. So having this knowledge about myself, I can evaluate, okay, you want to go to a game? I don't have the spoons for that. I don't have the energy for that. Whereas another day, I go, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So I'm able to evaluate where I stand and make it the best decision and decide, do I want to engage or do I not? And not feel bad about it either way.
So you've got a sense of control over things and you can avoid yourself getting into overtiredness, overstressed. You're aware now, and that means you manage your life in a way that you didn't before. You just pushed on through.
Absolutely. And it was interesting. My wife and I were talking about that very thing while we're at dinner with the noise. And one of the things that she noticed about me is since I learned I'm autistic and have learned this stuff about sensory in particular, that I'm less angry. And it makes perfect sense. If I didn't know what was causing these sensory challenges for me, I had no way to handle them. But now that I do, it's reduced my stress and I'm less angry. Knowing why I feel this angst with the external environment before learning I'm autistic, I was more angry. Now that I know it and can manage the stressors better, I'm less angry now than I was before.
So in the text, Scott, we're being asked, you're describing yourself as easier to live with, yeah?
Yes, it actually really helped my relationships, especially with my wife, and we learned how to navigate the ways that I interact. Absolutely.
And you said that you've been interacting more since your diagnosis. Do you mean online or socializing physically in the real world?
Probably less in the real world, mostly because I shifted from working in an office to working remotely from home. But I do interact quite a bit through my advocacy work with autistics and non-autistics alike globally. From that standpoint, I'm interacting with others a lot more than I ever have.
This word advocacy.
Yes.
Right. You know, we start with the idea of advocating for somebody who can't advocate for themselves. You know, a child needs an advocate, or somebody who maybe doesn't speak or uses alternative communication might need an advocate in some circumstances. But your word advocate, that means something different. What does this word advocate mean for you?
I do see that what you describe a great deal of overlap. It's really about helping share perspectives of the community as a whole, but especially myself. And I frequently am asked from others who maybe are not comfortable enough asking for themselves or asking for advice and helping raise their voice, elevate their voice. I do advocate. I'm active every single day. I am raising questions about the autistic experience through a multitude of different contexts and lenses to foster a dialogue that otherwise would not happen. It helps people see other aspects of this autistic experience and what it means to be autistic through lenses that they maybe never have thought of before. And it has brought about countless really deep conversations. And part of the point of it is to see others' perspectives, especially on controversial or taboo topics, so that we can find common ground and build from there.
You said the word taboo subject then.
Yes.
What are these taboo subjects?
Putting it generally, these are the topics that people, society in general, say are not appropriate for polite conversation. So things around identity, especially gender identity, things around sexuality, politics, religion, talking about it in a way that brings about curiosity versus...
You haven't mentioned a taboo subject yet. Politics,
Okay.
That's not taboo. Religion, that's not taboo. What's taboo?
So one of the questions I asked not long ago had to do with somebody who is a high support needs autistic person and whether or not they should be taught about sexuality and things around sexual arousal, attraction to same gendered or different gendered people, that sort of stuff. And the conversation was interesting. And some even said, well, I wouldn't even bring this up with that particular autistic person. And I really questioned, why not? They're a person. These things happen to everybody else. Why are they excluded?
Now I'm getting it. So you're trying to overcome people's prejudices about how autistic people are pathologized. Yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Helping to really break down those stigmas and stereotypes so that autistic people, regardless of how much support they need, are seen first and foremost as human beings, and that they are just as human as anybody else.
That we are just as human as anybody else.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great call out.
No, I'm playing with you, You seem such a confident guy. I feel confident to play with you a bit,
Absolutely.
And interesting thing is, just by speaking in this confident way on this station here so that other people can hear you, that's advocacy in its own right, isn't it?
Yes. And I think if people see that, that can even have a spillover effect to where maybe they are willing to speak, even if it's just to their family.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Let me go back, because you did say right at the head of the program there that you came from a medical background. I think that was paramedic.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And for you, the medical model had actually been a stumbling block for you to realize your own autism, because you had seen autism
taught and assumed that it was a defect of sorts and that it was a abnormal presentation to the normal human experience. And that actually was part of the transition that I took along my learning journey. And I had to break down my own biases there to really see things from a different perspective, which helped me take the Socratic approach to advocacy to a different realization.
Scott, you've used the big word, Socrates, Socratic approach. Can you give us some kind of, back of the envelope definition on that?
Yes. So Socrates was known for asking questions because he felt he actually did not know anything. And so his role was to ask questions of others. And in doing so, he's able to learn. Advocating through questions.
Let's take that from you. We're using a Socratic approach following Socrates. Because what we do here is ask questions instead of pushing understanding, to bring forth our own understanding into the world.
Capital T truth answer, because I believe that there are multiple realities, and what's right for me isn't necessarily right for anybody else, or what I believe to be true isn't true for other people. So instead of trying to argue for meet somewhere and learn what other people's truths are and to dig into why they believe that.
Okay, well, before we go down Descartes and existentialism, he's saying the inappropriate is our motto. And for him, it's more about misunderstanding or disconnection than taboo, because majority normativity is inactives because they're too risky to entertain. They're too risky, I'm saying, and I'm thinking is what he's saying, because they form people to question and they don't want to question. Are we in the same ballpark with Raymond here?
Absolutely. The cognitive dissonance that happens when you ask a provocative question is very unsettling for people. And I think part of it is learning through this approach. People learn to become uncomfortable with things that either A, they don't know, or B, maybe they thought they knew, and now there's a new reality that is different. So absolutely.
You're a personable chap. You come across as socially confident, easy speaking. You've got a voice that goes up and down, and everybody is happy to listen to you. Are you masking that right now?
Actually, no. That's me in a nutshell. I think there are times that I do mask, but since learning I'm autistic, I think I have dropped 90% of my masking, and I'm definitely a what you see is what you get, or in this case, what you hear is what you get.
That's a lovely thing you're saying, Raymond. Raymond has pointed out that in this space here, we come out of ourselves.
Yes, and to me, that's so empowering.
And you're being thanked. Has anybody denied your autism when you tell them? Has anybody said, you can't be autistic because, or you're not autistic because you do this? Any experiences like that?
Oh, absolutely. When I first learned, as I started sharing with folks, there was one person that I worked with that that person's first response to me, but I always thought you were so smart. Another friend of mine said, you can't be autistic. And even my own mother, which I did not share until a few weeks afterwards, just because I didn't know how to explain it to her. Even she was in denial, like, oh, no, you're not, because if you are, that means I might be as well. So and even to this day, I still get a little bit of that, but mostly when I'm interacting with healthcare professionals. And not to pick on them, but to pick on them.
Yeah, I'll chip in here a little bit, actually, because I felt that I had the same thing when I when I told my family about my autism diagnosis. I did have one of my close relatives tell me that I don't look like what she would expect an autistic person to actually look like, to which I said, well, really, what are you expecting? It's this perception that we should be displaying some way our autism on the outside all the time, when I've gone through years and years of being able to mask it. When I actually finally told people, I did find that I was getting a few people who were questioning me, almost like I had to prove myself. And I don't know if you felt that was something that happened to you as well, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I shared that I'm autistic, people would, I've had a couple people say it was definitely an affront to my experience and invalidating that. Though I will say, and I think because of my previous career, and I didn't have a choice but to be forthright, I just got to a point where, okay, that's your perspective. It's true for you. Whatever works, works. And, take it for what it is. But yes, I'm autistic.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that once you've got a kind of a self-acceptance, perhaps that makes it much easier for you to go forward and be able to advocate and talk about it, because you're now accepting, what you've been told, and looking at your life before the diagnosis, and maybe forgiving yourself for some of your behaviors beforehand when you were masking. Because, that's something I went through. I don't know if that's something you went through as well.
Yeah, especially in the workplace. I don't know about your work setting, but where I've been the last decade and a half or almost, the social gatherings after work was expected, although it was always voluntary. There was an undertone of social expectation, and it always made me really uncomfortable. Looking back at that now, I know why. I've got no problem saying yes or no, depending on how I feel. And I don't have to justify my decision. That was really liberating.
Totally get that. Absolutely. And I tended before to tell people that if I was going to a social thing, that I probably won't be doing chat or whatever. Now I'm trying to be really overt about how I feel. And I'll say, you can have me for an hour. You'll get a good hour out of me. And then after that, I will start to feel like I can't do the social thing anymore. So, it's being able to say to somebody, not a space I feel comfortable with, and I'm going to kind of excuse myself from this, feels really liberating.
Yes, it does. I think that's, at least from a professional standpoint, one of the greatest things is being able to say, whether it's a meeting or a social event or something, to be able to say, I'm not going to be able to attend, and not have to justify it. As my colleagues and my friends gotten to know me, it's just become a normal thing, and they don't try to push it. They don't try to convince me otherwise. They just accept it. And what a great world it could be if we could just be honest about our feelings and people don't take it personally and get upset about it.
Absolutely. It's about giving somebody the space to be themselves. And it's lovely when you do get a sense that people are now understanding where you're at and knowing that there are certain things that they won't get from you and certain things that they can get from you, or that some days you will and some days you won't. But, it gives you a nice freedom, and that's something to be thankful for.
Yes, definitely. To be able to, and having the right boss at work, for example, and being able to message them to say, I can't today. I am just overwhelmed. I don't have executive functioning worth a damn. I can't today. I might be able to come back in the afternoon, but it's likely going to be tomorrow. And that be okay. That has been incredible.
At this moment in time, there's Scott on screen, there's Lucy on screen, there's Raymond on screen, and there's Jules on screen. Just the names, no faces, all in audio. Is this a normal situation for you? 4 different autistic people having a chat together, sharing experience live like this?
I think before I learned I'm autistic, I never would have thought of that as being something that happens. It's only been in the last couple years that I realized, hey, you know what? This happens, and it's no different than anyone else. And for us to be able to come together and share our experiences and share them in a way that others can see it as well helps to normalize us as autistic people versus pathologizing us.
What's the future for your advocacy? You've been doing it for a while now. You've built up something. Well, first of all, tell me where we are with it now, and then tell me what the future is for it.
For a few years now, I have been doing what I call a reflective question to ponder. I post something every single day. That led to my first book published last year by the same name, A Reflective Question to Ponder. It contains my work through the Socratic questioning as well as my other perspectives. I now have a second book about the Socratic approach to advocating. It takes the reader through a Socratic dialogue between Socrates and a bunch of other characters to address those issues that need advocates and do so in a way that's entertaining as well as informative. And that's to help bring about social justice through this different approach to advocating. I hope to have that out in a couple months.
Excellent. So what I want us to do, I want us to make sure that in the program notes here, we've got some links to find your books at the moment. And then I want you to come back and I want you to just talk only about your book, the book you've already published. And then after that, I want you to come back and talk about the new book. Are you up for that?
That would be lovely, Jules. I would sincerely appreciate that.
Let's do it, friend. Let's do it. Because we're part of a revolution. We're part of a paradigm shift. We're part of the people who have been managing for years, have their skills, and have something to offer that we're going to take advantage of, aren't we? We're comrades in arms here.
Yes. I think taking hold of this momentum and taking it to that next place is part of this neurodivergent movement and really bringing about true, meaningful, sustainable change.
That's the last word. Meaningful, sustainable change. Thank you, Scott. We'll be back with you. We'll read your book.
Thank you.
Autistic Radio. Yeah, that really was worth listening to again for me. I found that helpful and inspiring, and I'll be pursuing more collaborations with Scott in the new year. We're going to move rooms now, set up a new live broadcast for the 444 room, where every Sunday a group of autistic people get together and just talk about their autism. Sometimes they moan a bit. Sometimes they tell each other how they feel rough. But all in all, getting that out there and speaking about it, and then seeing some obvious patterns in how we feel, ultimately turns out to be a good thing for us all. So I'm going to go and join my fellow conspirators at Autistic Radio and make a broadcast now on Autistic Radio Days in the 444 room.